Well, a bit disjointed, perhaps, because I've been on the train all day and dealing with these people in Manchester, so I wasn't quite with it, but still, you know, if there's anything... Oh gosh, it was funny these days when we started and everything was live and nothing could be recorded. We had Ampex tape came in the 60s, which was a sort of wide recording tape. You could record a program, you couldn't edit it. But, you know, apart from that, you know, everything was live. Have you been filming me?
I have.
Oh my goodness.
I was late. You know, I was getting a drink when Peter came in. You probably already told them about how the Clangers is coming about. I just wondered whether you've written these stories or how.
Well, I'll tell you. We had a year or so ago. We had to meet a man in Coolabye, who's our merchandising agents, who at Charing Cross. They do all the toys and things. They organise all these toys, and they had recently got together with the man who sold Oliver's films abroad, Dan Madicott, and they wanted to be able to. They didn't want us to start making new films for someone else, so we did promise not to, but they also wanted to be able to develop something, and we said never Bagpuss, you're never going to have, you know, Bagpuss, but the Clangers we were quite, easy about, and they had this man came over from America, and we met him down in Charing Cross, and he said he was an Englishman who remembered the Clangers, but he was working for a company, a television channel in America called Sprout, which does children's programs in the States. And he had persuaded them, he'd shown them some of the early Clanger films, and they were very interested in, you know, perhaps developing it. And they wanted, you know, they were, you know, wanted to know what we thought about that. So we had this arrangement with them, and they had promised to put in some money to that, and then the company started looking around to see if anyone else was interested, and eventually they got CBeebies to be, so the BBC also came on board, and so I mean all this story that came into the papers that BBC pay $5 million for was rubbish, because the BBC I think put in $1 million and Sprout put in another $1 million, so I don't know where the rest of the money's come from, but at the moment, you know, so okay, we agreed to do it. Then we had meetings about scripts and how they were done. They insisted, or we insisted, but they agreed very much that the Clangers had that sort of quality of handmade animation that should be retained, never CGI, never computer generated stuff at all, but you know, definitely single frame made with real puppets, and they had this is the company in Manchester that made,
I know them, yeah.
You know them, yeah, the factory, they made things like Mr. Fox, you know, fantastic Mr. Fox, and some of the Tim Burton stuff. And so we've had quite a lot of meetings with them, and they are, I mean today I was up there, an exhausting day really, because they had produced hundreds of versions of knitted pink material, and ears and noses and, you know, and the bits of the sets, you know, trying, you know, developing from my drawings. I did some visualizations of it, and so it's definitely happening. I mean, we've definitely started, and they are really trying to keep as near as possible to the originals. And the only trouble is they're all the time saying, well, of course the Americans won't like this, or, you know, it had to be changed, because, you know, there are certain rules among the broadcasters about what you're allowed to do and not do, you know, certain bits of, you know, risks you're taking. You mustn't have the soup dragons hold, because people might fall in them, or yeah, there was one, Dan Postgate is writing the stories, some of them.
Yeah, he's
Oliver's son, yeah, because they've got another script writer, but Dan is basically coming up with the first 5 stories. Eventually going to make 52. Which is twice as many as we ever made, and they're not using the original stories. They want to be able to make them into independent stories, so they don't depend one upon. I mean, it isn't like suddenly the spaceman appears and then he's there. You know, everything has to be separate, so it's quite a tricky thing to do. And also things like, you know, what can we distinguish one Clanger from another by the colour pink? I mean, the details like that. So yeah, anything was happening. And,
but it is a little bit frustrating. But it's very unfortunate that that's the way the business has gone. It's a bit of a shame. But as long as hopefully, you know, you and your family will, you know, get a decent amount out of it for the sweat. So.
Yeah, we own it. I mean, Dan Postgate is now Small Films. I mean, Oliver left Small Films to Dan. He's got 2 twin brothers, and he's got, you know, but Oliver trusted him to, because he's a writer himself. I mean, Dan's written quite a lot of very nice children's books himself, and he's writing the scripts, and he's got it. He's very strict about what they're doing with the puppets, and I'm a bit less strict because I'm a bit lazy. But you know, we still keep an eye on everything, and they definitely have got the man that's the director there says. Even after they've made, we don't want any CGI to alter effects and things. Everything's got to be in camera. You know, they're trying to make it as real as possible. Even to the fact that the background, which will be a dark sky with stars. But of course, when we did it in my barn, I bought lots of Christmas decorations and hung them on cotton. So those little stars were little Christmas decorations, which. And he said, what I liked about the original was that the stars, as you went through the heavens at the beginning of the thing, you could see that those stars weren't in the distance, because of the perspective. You know. So he wants to retain that sort of magic quality about it.
So they're going to actually shoot us in their studio, because they've got their own setup now with an animation studio beside the model studio. They're going to shoot it beside. In Manchester, where the model makers are, they get to use their animation studio.
Oh yes, it's being the model makers are what are they called?
McKenna's and Saunders or whatever.
Saunders, that's right, McKenna and Saunders. Yeah, they're making the puppets, and Factory is the company that's making the film and the sets. It's going to be made up there. Yes.
What about sound? What are they doing for the sound?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It's gonna They haven't actually made up their mind about who's going to narrate, because you know the original Clangers was made. Oliver always wanted to make a film with sound and effects and no narration. He'd had enough of using words. He wanted this sort of thing, and the BBC looked at the first pilot and says, "What's happening, darling? We don't understand what's going on. The children won't know, whistles, you know." So Oliver added the narration afterwards, telling, it's sort of, you know, there's this sort of God looking down on the planet telling you what's going on, sort of thing. So, you know, that's how it eventually happened. When Oliver and I went to Germany, there was a puppet festival in Germany, and we were invited over. And Oliver had taken over a Clangers film with no soundtrack, with no narration, just the sound and effects. And he said the BBC were a bit confused about what was going on, and they said, "Oh no, those puppets are speaking perfect German." So, you know, everyone translates the whistles in their own way, and you know, it worked quite well. But so the question is, are you? Dan is going to write a sort of narration, but is it going to be quite the same as the narrator sort of commenting on what is actually happening? Or is it going to be, leading the action? But that's a lot of things have still got to be decided.
But the Swanee whistle is such a sort of inspiration. I don't know. Do people know what a Swanee whistle is? Peter,
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
It's so sad. I think I find the Swanee, the Clangers conversation is so sad. I think they've been, I don't find it very upbeat. But that's, that's my opinion.
I think that it was just such a big thing, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I remember that the best ever feeling on the Sunday was just my mum would get toast, and you'd have some anchovies on toast, but you'd have to get it just in time for the Clangers. Me and my mum and dad, it was the best experience in the whole world. What are they going to do this week? And you'd have all this weird stuff going on in the soup kitchen. It was really the scent. I just can't separate the Clangers from anchovies on toast. Amazing.
That's almost a story, isn't it? Antivirs on toast, land on the planet. But actually, the stories, there's no real logic to any of this. And yet today they were talking about, have we got night and day? Because in America, if they have a program showing in the morning, they don't want a program which is set in the night. You know, oh, this tiny clanger gets up in the morning, is it morning or is it night? And we didn't ever think of this because there was just a big background, you know, and Oliver filmed it with the lights. But they are talking about varying the lighting a bit for day and night, so we have a sort of sequence in the day. I told them that it's a small planet. It turns twice as fast as the Earth, so there's only 6 hours in the day, and so their clock has 6 hours on it. And these are sort of logics, you know, the logic. What is the music boat? What power does that? It's just a boat with notes, and as the rising scale takes it up. And those sort of imaginative, they're not really logical, but you know, those imaginative things. There's a sort of mad logic about it, but there's no real, I mean, you can't, is there an atmosphere? Oh, they need an atmosphere to squeak, really, don't they? I mean, you know, we never really worked out the logic behind the world of the Clangers. And they can see because they looked through a telescope and saw Earth. They saw a football match on Earth. I mean, they haven't irradiated, because the iron chicken sits on the nest in outer space. You know what the iron chicken is? In those days, that was the sort of first man was on the moon for the first time. Oliver and I sat up to see if they would successfully land on the moon, because we'd made the first series and we knew that if there was a disaster on the moon, they would never show the Clangers because we'd got that. But you know, everything went well, and also we didn't know when we made it who would be first, and who would be first, the Russians or the Americans. So when they had brought their flag up and set it up, it had the stars and stripes with the hammer and sickle on it. So it was like hedging our bets a bit. So lots of little things like that happened. So we and someone said to Dan, you know, Dan tells a story about his father. Someone said to him, why did the spaceman go around collecting moon rock with a wicker basket, a shopping basket? Oliver said, well, that was all we had, you know, around, because everything seemed to be around the house, you know, we pick things up and use them. So we're hoping that it'll please everyone. We'll no doubt. I mean, Dan's already had complaints saying, "What are you doing to the Clangers? You know, it's disgraceful. You should start making them again. You know, you'll ruin it," and all that sort of thing. But of course, the old ones were quite crudely made. Oliver trying to fly a music boat across the barn, you know, above this planet. It meant sort of wiring, putting this invisible cotton in all sorts of directions to stop it wobbling. But even then, you quite often see that music boat or the Iron Chicken flying off through space, and they're not doing that. They're doing because they never stop wobbling. So it's a bit shaky. They were no doubt.
Didn't the planet set fire with a firework?
That's right. They did. Yes, we had that time when they sent a rocket up into space, and I'd made this rocket out of it was a sort of a Brobat jar or something with, and at the bottom was a little firework, which and because I needed to light the firework, Oliver was working the camera, so he got my wife's Uncle Bill to come along and pull the string to lift it off the planet, and so I lit the firework and dodged down, and it set off, and Uncle Bill pulled the string and it slowly went up and the flame went like that, and when it disappeared there was a flame on the set and the polystyrene had caught fire. So I think he cut those frames out. I think it can be seen actually on one of the shots. Little accidents happened, yes.
Can I ask, one's actually being shot like animated, is it secret? One's actually going in the, yeah.
Sorry?
One's actually being animated.
The new Clanger?
Yes.
In Manchester?
Yeah.
When? Oh, they're hoping that the first 6, I think, will be like sometime April 2015. Okay. You know, they're hoping they'll get the first ones to show, but they, as they've ordered 52, they've really got to have, you know, continuous production of those. But they're hoping that in 2015 they'll start showing them.
So they're making them, starting making them when?
Well, they haven't seen. We haven't.
Here.
They've made these models of the sets based on my original drawings, adapted slightly for what they can make up there. So they've made white models, 1/5 scale models of the bits of the set. These have got to be photographed, coloured on what's it called? Photoshop, you know, coloured, so that it looks like the finished thing, sent to America and get their approval for everything before it can start, so before they build the final sets. So they're hoping to get the final sets made, like, you know, the end of this year or beginning of next year. So, see, the film is going to, you know, it's going to be some time. They've then got a year to make the first set. Or I don't know how many, I don't know what the schedule is, but they're sort of trying hard to get started in the new year, making the actual animations. Because I mean, they've copied the puppets exactly. I've seen plasticine maquettes of the puppets in white, you know, the shapes, and they've perfectly followed everything on the original puppets they haven't actually done three-dimensional, what's it called? Three-dimensional copying with them, but they've actually made very good models, and you know they're going to be made quite soon, I think. Puppets. Ah, yes.
Do you want to take a short break and maybe introduce a couple of films in a bit?
Okay, are you okay then, sitting watching the films? Because you can choose. You want to choose some bits to watch?
Well, I thought as you just
Yeah, fine. I'm quite happy.
been delivering a lecture for over an hour. Perhaps you want a chance to drink your ginger beer.
Okay.
Is that all right? How does everyone feel? Okay, so 5-minute break. So just time to get to the bar, and we'll start again in a minute. But before you go, a big round of applause for Peter Firmin.